Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
We're ready for Matt. You can come if you want. Matt-Inman, the-oatmeal, which I'm assuming you've heard of by now. I guess Matt came courtesy through Social Media Club Seattle. Again, another fantastic resource here locally. Presented the other night, and I said, dude, you've got to do Gnome Decks. But everyone was lining up around the block, seemingly, to talk to Matt. No doubt you'll figure out why if you haven't already figured it out. But I just ran up real quick, and I think in like 5 seconds I said, I'll email Gnome Decks. I'd love to do it. Talk to you later. And that was it. And I rushed off. So, Matt-Inman, the-oatmeal.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. And you know, like you said, this was sort of last minute, so my presentation was kind of hacked together from a bunch of slides. So if it's a bit weird, or if I start rambling about mayonnaise or electromagnetism, just cut the power, or shoot me with a tranquilizer dart, or do whatever it is you got to do. So basically, I run a comedy website called The-Oatmeal. It's about a year old, and it's been doing really, really well. So today I want to talk about maybe why, and give you guys some inspiration, some ideas, and sort of how I do what I do. So before I get into The-Oatmeal, I kind of want to go back into where I got started. Initially, I started an online dating site. I started it as a night and weekend side job because I was miserable where I was working and I wanted to try something new. So basically, I would go home after work and I would just work on this bad boy, and I got it done and I launched it. And within 6 months of having it online, it had 2 million page views and over 100,000 registered users. And it was acquired by a competitor. I went to go work for that competitor, and I worked for them doing viral marketing. And within a year, it had 40 million page views a month, and we had 1 million registered users. And it managed to bump its way into being one of the largest free online dating sites in the United States. All of that thanks to the viral marketing of mainly one guy. So, you know, obviously, in a short period of time, that's pretty impressive. So, you know, the question is, how did I do this? What kind of tricks do I have? What did I do to basically get the word out about my site? Because if there's one thing, it's to have a dating site, basically the hardest part about it is to have users. You know, you can add all these features you want, but unless you have people using a dating site, it's a worthless site. So how did I convince 100,000, soon to be 1 million people to use it? And the short answer to that is I started writing blog posts and quizzes that were viral, I guess. And one of the first ones I did was called How Dating My Ex-Girlfriend Was Like Playing Doom 2 on Nightmare Mode. And if you've ever played Doom 2, you know that Nightmare Mode is completely unfair. Like, you cannot win. There's no point even playing it. So, you know, this is funny to read, and sort of the humor behind it is very geeky. You know, geeks played Doom. Most people have played Doom, but I kind of, oftentimes when I come up with an idea, I'll strike at the heart of geekdom, because it sort of starts there and it spreads everywhere else. So that was sort of how I got my start. But the problem was, I was getting all this traffic, I was getting some links, but really, like, people aren't gonna read this and go, oh, that's funny, I'm gonna go sign up, you know, for a dating site. It was kind of an awkward fit. So what I actually stumbled onto was quizzes. And I made a lot of these. The first one I made was called How Geek Are You? You answer a bunch of questions about, you know, do you, for instance, watch Firefly? Or do you code? Do you design? Do you still have, like, collectible plastic dinosaurs in your office? Like, things like that some of us do. And, you know, what I stumbled on was that basically you'd take this quiz. After you're done, it would give you your score. So I take this and it would tell me I'm, I don't know, 87% geek or whatever. And it would give you this little badge to put on your website. And I'll walk you through how this works because it's kind of cool. Basically, this was a good one that I made. It asks you questions like, you know, how big are you? How big are your muscles? And it'll tell you how many cannibals you could feed. The trick was, you take this quiz, and it would say, I could feed 15 cannibals. And you would take that little, basically that snippet of HTML code on the right, you'd embed it in your blog, and people could share with their friends, and it spread virally this way, which was great, which is sort of like, I kind of look at viral marketing, the best viral marketing isn't the kind that you put the marketing out there and it grows and then it dies. It's the kind that you seed it and it flourishes. And these did that really well. But the trick was, if you look at that little orange arrow, it's pointing to a link that says, created by Mingle2, that was my dating site, free online dating. So I was building like tens of thousands of links back to my dating site with the anchor text, free online dating. So what that did was it made it so that if you Googled free online dating, my site showed up first, courtesy of cannibals, zombies, and all that other stuff. So that was sort of the basis of how I got my website to rank at Google for every dating keyword you can think of, Seattle singles, online dating, that kind of stuff. This was another one I made called What Are Your Chances of Surviving a Zombie Apocalypse? This one really resonated with people because, you know, me personally, I don't fantasize about watching my family get eaten. I fantasize about being in a Costco with a trampoline and lots of nacho cheese and a shotgun. Like, that sounds amazing to me. And I felt like that idea was sort of shared with a lot of other people. So I made a quiz about it. And once again, it would tell you, you have a 50% chance of survival. And they go, oh, that's cute. And they put it on their blog. Meanwhile, they'd link to my dating site, and I would rank for dating keywords. So This was one of the last ones I did called you could find out how much your dead body is worth. And actually at the time my brother was in med school, and there's not a lot of science behind this, I just make it up, but with him I actually asked him questions like, if you had a cadaver, what would you like to see the most? And we had like an hour-long debate about it, so it's nice to include the family on that one. So eventually I got sick of making quizzes. I felt like I'd run it in the ground, it was boring, so I started making comics. This is one of the first comics I ever made. It's Types of Crappy Kissers. And these were great because they got a lot of traffic and they got a lot of attention. They didn't quite build the links the way that the quizzes did. And again, I kept making a lot of content. This comics in particular themed around online dating, so kissing, dating, kind of the same realm, to try and make it in line with my brand, make it so that if people remember Mingle 2, they remember online dating, but they also remember lots of funny dating comics. So that both in terms of people's eyes as well as Google's eyes, I'm relevant for that word. This was one of my favorites. 10 reasons it would rule to date a unicorn. Rule number 1 being they fart glitter. And there's a bit of a formula to some of these, because what I do is I take the word that I want to market, like dating, and I attach something nonsensical to it, in this case, these beasts that you see before you. This was one of my favorites. It's called The 8 Phases of Dating. This is the comfortable phase, when you're kind of cool with each other. And I'm not married, but this is how I pictured marriage being. And I've actually had a lot of people... A lot of people told me I should make a comic about having babies and like what it's like to raise a child. I would be speculating, so I haven't done it yet, but maybe later on. But the 8 phases of dating, I felt like I had enough experience there, I could cover it. This was a fake dating site I made called Zombie Harmony. It was, again, it was like mingle2.com/zombieharmony or something like that. And again, the idea was I wanted Google to link to me about dating, or people to link to me about dating, so I show up in Google, as well as I wanted to raise exposure about Mingle 2 being dating related. So the real cool thing about this was if you Googled the word, I think it was free dating site, I was outranking outranking eHarmony, Match.com, companies with like millions and millions in marketing dollars, outranked by one guy who made a web page in a couple of hours. So it's a cool testament to like, if you are one person and you can code and design or market, or just a very solemn, small entity, what you can do. I can overcome Match.com using this. So it's a very cool time to be making content on the web, in my opinion. This is one of my most popular comics, and this is what inspired me to stop making quizzes. This is a quiz part of a comic, but it's called How to Tell If Your Cat is Plotting to Kill You. And anyone who's ever had a cat sort of looks at the nature of a cat, and they're cute and they're fun, but there's also that underlying, like, is my cat after me? So that's where this came from. And oftentimes what I'll do is I'll take a subject that, you sort of look at it from an angle that we all think but we don't really say. In this case, cats sort of being evil and malicious, and just putting it out there in a way that no one has before. So what was the problem with Mingle 2 and my dating job? I basically quit my old job. I was working for myself. I got rehired in a new company, so I was kind of not really working for the man, but I was kind of unhappy there. And also I was, I was building material that had to be focused around dating. And people didn't like that. I started to get comments like, oh, it's just the dating spammer again, up to his old spam sandwiches, making spam gravy. So I wanted to break out on my own again. So a little over a year ago, I started the-oatmeal, and that's sort of where it came from. I used to be commissioned to make funny viral things, and now the-oatmeal is just sort of like the culmination of that, as being the-oatmeal is the product. It's not a dating site, it's not some merchandise, it's just the-oatmeal. In terms of what's been going on with the-oatmeal, it's a year old. It's doing well. It's got 4.5 million uniques a month, 20 million page views, book deal, all that fun stuff. So all of this mostly provided by viral marketing of me, because my website is still a one-man operation. The only help I have hired is currently some family members of mine who help me ship merchandise, because I sell posters and things like that. And it was great. Last month, Time Magazine named it one of the best blogs of 2010. All of this by one guy. So, I kind of want to talk about, like I was doing before, how do I make these things funny or interesting? And, not everyone's funny. Not everyone's a math guy. Not everyone's a designer. So maybe inspire you guys to take an angle on something and make it go viral. So this is one of the first comics I put in my old book, called 8 Ways to Prepare Your Pets for War. Again, kind of, picking a subject, in which case the oatmeal, there was nothing I had to be attached to. And I could write about any angle, attaching something silly to it. So I will actually take a noun that I want to focus on, like head lice or tapeworms or malaria or electromagnetism or mayonnaise, as mentioned earlier, and sort of just attach funny things to it, and it works pretty well. It's not exactly a formula, but it's the best advice I can give you. This was one that I used that I actually didn't know how to use a semicolon. I didn't know how to use one, and I felt like a lot of other people didn't. And I felt like someone had to say how to use a semicolon. So I learned how to use one, and then I wrote an illustrated guide. So what's good to do is maybe look at a mistake everyone's making on the internet and in the public in general. For instance, the misuse of the word literally. I've actually was at this conference, and I've heard a few people on stage and off misuse literally. It's fine. And I've done it too. So I want to make a comic about the proper way to use literally. Titling is important. This is from a comic called 6 or 5 Reasons Bacon is Better Than True Love. You see this title and you're like, I want to click that. I want to read it. It's funny. It's quick. They're not going to read some like 25 paragraph diatribe from you and your heart being poured into a blog entry. Because these things are just little marketing, like eye grabbers, basically. They're not meant to be your life's work. You can put your life's work elsewhere. Just this is for the viral part. This was a quiz called How long could you survive chained to a bunk bed with a velociraptor? And what was great about this was originally hosted on bunkbeds.net. It was a commercial site. And as you can imagine, we got ranked for bunk beds courtesy of that. So it was a cool little thing. And eventually the site got acquired. And when they acquired it, they didn't keep the quiz. So I put it on the-oatmeal sort of as just kind of, a leftover thing. This was called the Teenager Audio Test. I found this MP3 where you play the sound, and old people can't hear it, and people with hearing damage can't hear it. So if you worked with loud machinery, you can't hear it. It's this little like high-pitched squeaking noise. And I put it in a quiz form so you could say, oh, I can hear the sound or I can't. And what was sort of grabbed people about this was it was one of those things you instantly want to, first you want to know, and second you want to share. You want to be like, can I hear it? And then after you can or cannot, you want to share it. So this was on a website called trainhorns.net, which are these like giant air compressed horns rednecks put on their trucks. And when you took this quiz, it would link back with train horns, and we ranked #1 for that keyword, and we were able to sell redneck horns from the website. So what is my formula? What are my tricks for coming up with these ideas? First one is find a common gripe. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll pick something, like I said before, that we're all thinking, we're all pissed about, or we're all happy about, or whatever it is that's going on, and say it, articulate it. This is one of my favorite ones called How to Suck at Facebook, where, anyone who's used Facebook has suffered in some way. And so I tried to point out some of the reasons why, including that one. So the other ones being like the obnoxious photo tagger, or the person who, I have one called a rash, which is someone where they get on your Facebook and they comment on everything you do. And they go, oh my God, that's so amazing. And you like update your location. They're like, oh, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And they follow you around like a little weasel. So again, articulating a gripe works really well. It's sort of like the old comic Standby, like, what's with airline food? Like that sounds lame, but you can actually take that and apply it to bigger things and smaller things. Like I gave a presentation a couple days ago at SMC Seattle, and I was talking about how every morning when I go to get breakfast, or go to walk my dog, these a-hole spiders zigzag webs across the entranceway to my house. And so I get a mouthful of cobwebs every single time I go to walk my dog in the morning. So I was thinking, when I go through a cobweb, the worst part about that is that spider could be anywhere. He could be on your privates, he could be in your ears laying eggs, he could be anywhere. And so that's one simple idea, and I made the comic. I drew it in 20 minutes a few days ago, and it's already gotten, like 100,000 people have read it so far. So it's, again, finding a little gripe and making it public. This was a comic about customer service. We all know how terrible that can be, so. This was one called 10 Words You Need to Stop Misspelling. I'm not crazy about grammar. I know a little bit about it, and I like writing about it, but on the internet, we always see these words that are misspelled that simply should not be. Because when someone writes me an email and they misspell something, it's like they go from being a normal person to being like a brain-damaged cricket that's now writing me this email. So I felt like I should correct them with a comic. 10 reasons to avoid talking on the phone. If you're like me, when I'm on the phone, I'm uncomfortable the entire time because all I can think about is how I need to get off the phone as soon as possible. So I keep looking for that reason to jump in, like waiting for that pause, and you're like, well, it's nice talking to you, and then they keep going and going. So I think especially with our generation and people who, at every possible moment in silence in a conversation, they look at their phone to read something, this was something that really would resonate with people, and it did. I hate porta potties. I think they are the most awful thing we've ever invented, and there's a lot of room for improvement there. So I made a comic about it. And this one's not out yet. This is a new comic for me. So again, finding something that we all dislike and putting it in words. Pick things everyone can relate to. People suggest ideas to me all the time, and some of them are great, some are not. One guy the other day suggested I should make a comic about his border collie. Not border collies, but his border collie. Obviously, not everyone's going to be into that. This other woman emailed me from New Zealand, and there's some kind of famous goat race. And she's like, oh man, it was such BS how the judges were biased in this goat race. And I'm like, I don't think most people watch that race. I'm going on a limb here. So don't do that. Try to pick things that we all can kind of, relate to, such as this. More so, well, you can relate to this in two ways. One, I think if you've ever watched a Justin Bieber video, your eyes, your ears will bleed. I mean, it's awful. It's like reading descriptions of the Holocaust. It's just like a horror story. And second, and most importantly, when you read this, you imagine this little 16-year-old girl-man thing, and you think to yourself, how many of those could I actually take? Because you actually want to know, right? Like, could I take 5, 12? Like, it's like fighting a swarm of little singing bees. So it's good to make content that sort of, it kind of challenges what you think you can do, your ability, whether that's physical strength or mental strength. I made a lot of quizzes that are educational too, like how much do you know about sushi, or how much do you know about bacon, and I would quiz people. So it's good to challenge people, like make them so that when they read it, they want to know the answer. This was something I made called the death report. This was actually a really old quiz of mine where you tell your birthday, and it would tell you statistically how many people died that day. So you could say, I was born on September 24th, 1982, and 250,000 people left the earth that day. And in addition, I would tell you natural disasters, famous people that died in this huge list. We all have birthdays. We all love reading about what happened on our birthday, so it's something we can all relate to. This is a conference, so I've shaken a lot of hands, and I think we can all relate to these people. I actually given out more terrible handshakes than I've received here, so I apologize to those of you who got them. Create easily digestible content. What I mean by that is stuff that just can, maybe this is not the right word choice, but something that kind of pass through you real quickly and easily. Like I was saying before, if you want to create something that grabs people's attention, something that they'll see that link on their Twitter feed and they'll click on it. Make something where the title is simple, and when they click through, it's got maybe heavy on visuals or heavy on humor or something. I write a lot of illustrated stories in addition to comics, and oftentimes I'll always start with a picture or an illustration, because if people encounter a block of text first, they might not necessarily read it. If you want inspiration for this kind of stuff, you can look online. You can look on things like Men's Health magazine. Every freaking issue, there's something about getting a six-pack abs by exercising in no time at all. Every one. And I wish that were the truth, but it's not. But what it does is get you to buy that crappy magazine. Create an infographic. What these are basically infographics, kind of a diluted word at this point, but sort of what they mean is they're like you take some piece of data or something people aren't too familiar with, and you basically redraw it in a way that they can relate to. So for example, this was one that I made called 15 Things Worth Knowing About Beer, talking about how pilgrims, this is actually true, they stopped at the Plymouth Rock because they ran out of alcohol. So that's kind of fun, that's kind of interesting, that's definitely something that people want to read. So another great example is there's an artist named Jess Bachman who does infographics, and he did one about beer as well. And what he showed was, he showed how much beer we drink in the United States represented as I think it was 1,000 pixel tall picture, and then he showed basically proportionally how a 747 would look to that, so you could actually see the size of a 747 compared to this giant bazillion pixel tall thing. It put things in perspective. And if you're not funny and you have a brand or a company and you don't want to be funny or you can't be funny, sometimes infographics work better that way if you do something informationally rather than humor, because we can't all be funny or whatever. This is from 16 Things You Never Knew About the Automobile. Talking about, lots of facts like I did with the other one, except this one, the first example I think is great because it, again, strikes at that geek core, sort of relating the first steering wheel to being a lever, which is sort of like a joystick. And again, if a geek were to pick this or open this, the first thing he would see is a reference that he likes and he thinks is funny and would stick and read the rest of the article. So it's an effective infographic in that sense. When to use IE in a sentence? I'm talking about not Internet Explorer, because the only way to use Internet Explorer in a sentence is to say Internet Explorer sucks giant raging balls through a tiny straw. But I'm referring to the grammar in this case. So again, most people, myself included, we were using IE wrong. I thought it meant for example, and it doesn't. It means sort of that is, or in other words, or clarification, or in essence is a good way to remember it. So plenty of people misuse it, so a good viral marketing or campaign or whatever you want to call it is to kind of point that out, educate people. And do it offensively, talking about ranch dressing and things like that. That's sort of my take on it. People don't want to read a 12-page article about the proper usage of IE. They want to read things about Bigfoot. So it's a good way to get your message across. This should be obvious. Memes, current events, all that kind of stuff. Zombies, bacon, blah, blah, blah. I tend to talk about a lot of these. I try not to incorporate too many of them, but a good example of one is an ex-girlfriend of mine lent me a book, and the book's called Twilight, and she said I would like it. So it's 480 pages long. I read 400 of those pages, and actually quit reading at 400 pages because I was so disinterested in the characters, I just wanted to like burn it. So I actually discovered, or I think I discovered, the formula for how Twilight works. And I sort of broke it down. This is just a screenshot from there of maybe how the Twilight formula works. So oftentimes, if you can take something that's popular yet crappy and maybe make fun of it, that works really well too. I'm searching for a new Twilight, like a new type of Twilight, because I really want to find something new to make fun of. So. Excellent. I went and saw The Expendables, actually, just to offset the box office earnings of that movie. And it worked. We actually, anyway, I agree. This is FaceSpace. This is MySpace, FaceSpace merged, or MySpace and Facebook merged. So it's covered in rap videos and what you want to holla about and all that kind of garbage. So, and it actually autoplays an Usher video. Because you remember MySpace would autoplay everything? So, again, pop culture. I don't know what the hell this slide is doing here, but I'll just talk about it anyway. This is striking at geek things that I want to educate people or let them know. Nikola Tesla was an amazing man and a very kind of unsung hero in modern engineering. I mean, all the electricity in this room is run on AC current, which he invented. He invented things like neon and radar, and he was like crazy insane, or crazy genius, but also like batshit insane. The guy died talking to a pigeon alone in his hotel room with like no money. So I feel like this poor pigeon man should have somebody talk about him. So I wanted to enlighten people about him. So I made a comic about it, which isn't, it's not out yet. If I get desperate, I come up with a formula, like I used to do client work. So I make a list of nouns on the left and then a list, or the word that I want to market on the right. So if you have a website that's like, we have a social media blog, which Twitter spheres the general, I don't know, engagement conscience of blah, 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 blah. Just put that on the right and then connect it to torpedo kittens or self-immolation. And what you can do is you can come up with a formula. So I connect it to lightning storm and pigs. And here I've got 5 reasons to put socks in a pig during a lightning storm. And suddenly you've got a way to market socks, right? Piece of cake. So I'll go back to that. All right, I'll just put it there. So basically, this was a client, before the oatmeal went full time, this was a client of mine, and they had a website called sextoys.org, and they wanted me to market it using a quiz. So I was like, all right, let's make a quiz about sex toys. So this is what I came up with. They told me this was inappropriate for the site. I was like, all right, so yeah, that's why it's on the oatmeal now, because I couldn't use it for that client. So actually, I gave him this one instead, which isn't nearly as funny, but it gets the job done. 5 reasons an inflatable girlfriend is better than a real one. Talking about using an inflatable girl as like a coaster, and there's another scene where he's like wearing a pirate hat and he's like kayaking with her and stuff. And of course, people get angry if you do that, so I did one about kind of the flip side of that. 5 reasons a vibrator is better than a real guy. So the client liked this one. But again, kind of taking your whatever it is you're marketing or your website and attaching something funny to it. In this case, this guy, watching Matlock after 30 seconds of intercourse. Inside an emotion. Printers, right? They're awful. They haven't worked right. In basically the entire, some of my tech career, I've never had a printer that worked properly. I have lots of printers at my house, too. I print things for a living. So I felt like, there's an ocean of rage to draw from in printers. And I made a comic about how I think they're from hell. I hate horses. I hate them. I grew up in Idaho, and I had to, I spent my youth moving giant bales of hay and dealing with, oceans of horse feces and getting chased. One of them had, he was, aroused, and he chased me, and I fell into an electric fence, and I got zapped, a bunch of times trying to get... Anyway, point is, I'm kind of getting on I'm ranting about horses up here. Point is, I don't like them, and I didn't make this intentionally to incite an emotion, but I accidentally did by all these people who think horses are these beautiful creatures that crap out jelly beans and stuff, when really they're giant poop pumps, in my opinion. I used to be a web designer, right? So I felt like, again, with the other thing I was just talking about, how there's this big sea of rage and maybe desperation with people who've ever done design for a living. You know that how clients can be and how they can ruin your life, making design changes, changing the color of a logo. So I felt like I'd kind of appeal to those people, sort of like a sympathetic way. So I got a lot of people who thought this was funny. When I made this comic, I didn't think it was funny at all. I thought it was more like a FU to the clients that I've had in the past. But again, finding an emotion and pulling it out of people, whether it's humor or whatever. If you want to get attention to a website, disgust people and make them grossed out. This is a website I made called Women with Mustaches, and it's exactly what you're looking at. It's pictures of women with real mustaches. I don't allow any fake ones on there. And this for some reason got a lot of attention, and I got a lot of people that were very angry at me because it's not fair to women who have, I don't know, unchecked facial growth or something. So I made this, Marvelous Man Boobs, which is the follow-up to that to sort of balance out the equation. So yeah, I like to end on man boobs, so thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Oh, doing questions? Okay, yep.
What was number 6? I must have missed it, or there was a counting, like the ways to do things. Like number 5 was talk about memes and current events.
You know, I don't think there is a number 6. Sorry about that. Like I said, I hacked this presentation together at the last minute, and I can't actually count, so both of those.
Oh, come.
Hey man, awesome stuff. I wanted to ask you about some of your early work in regards to what essentially seems like really artful Google bombing. It seems like a one-man 4chan shop where you're able to take a meme, act on it, and get what you want out of Google. How sustainable have you found that's been?
It wasn't. Like, it worked for a couple years, and then I got, The Guardian did an expose on me. And it was actually a pretty balanced article. They said I was a fiend, but they also said I was a genius, and they said they don't know if I was good or bad or whatever. But yeah, the problem is Google doesn't like it when people manipulate the results, and I was doing it in a very aggressive way. I ranked #1 for the word cash advance and payday loans, which is one of the most lucrative keywords on the internet. I did it in 6 weeks. So when you do that kind of thing, Google gets pissed, other SEOs get pissed. So I would not call it sustainable. In fact, I wouldn't really recommend doing quizzes if you want to rank for keywords anymore. I would do it if you want to maybe raise exposure about your brand, or like overall kind of get more links to your page, but not like in an aggressive way. So like if you have a website that sells, I don't know, washing machines or something, maybe make a quiz called like how long could you survive on a washing machine, which will kind of give you some links to it, and it's kind of relevant. So if someone were to search for washing machines, maybe you kind of deserve to be there. So I wouldn't recommend, like, don't walk away from a presentation and be like, I'm gonna make quizzes, I'm gonna be rich and famous, that's my plan. Like that's crap, don't do that. So